So welcome everyone to MPAC's FIMS learning webinar on Interfund gifts and grants using the Interfund module. A couple of housekeeping notes. We are recording this and you will be able to find a link to this and all previous recordings in our knowledge base. If you have any questions during the presentation, please enter them in the Q&A and I'll be monitoring that and we'll interrupt Robin if we need to or make time at the end. If you haven't met me yet, my name is Amy Strom, and today you'll be hearing from our expert, Robin. Let's take a quick look at our agenda today. Robin's going to go through Interfund account defaults, Interfund module for journal entries, which is best for you, profiles, system options, and creating and processing those Interfund transactions. And then, of course, so you can report out on those. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Robin and take it away.
Thank you, Amy. Let me share my screen so everybody can see my FIMS. And you all should be able to see my FIMS Navigator screen at this point. So welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I have a lot of information for all of you, and I've also put together a document that kind of combines all of the pieces and the things that I'm going to cover today into a single document as a reference point that you'll get, along with the link to the recording after today's session. All right, to access the Interfund module, you're going to go to View on the menu bar and go down to the Interfund module. So the Interfund module makes creating interfunds easier for you because you can do everything in one place. And it also links the gift and the grant components together into a single record with an actual Interfund number. So this information can be seen in both the Interfund, excuse me, the Interfund module. You can see the application history, and you can also see gift history. But the cool thing is you can see Interfund gifts and Interfund grants in both the Interfund grant module and the grant module and the gift module. So that's visible in multiple places. The first thing I want to start with is fund class defaults. And the reason why I want to talk about that is these are the accounts that are going to be debited and credited when you create an interfund. So I'm going to go to File Maintenance, and I'm going to go to Funds, and then I'm going to go to Fund Code Maintenance and Fund Class, because that's where your default accounts are. So there's a lot more than just the interfund defaults in here. So let me go to my endowed fund class, and there's 4 interfund gift default accounts, and there are 2 interfund grants. So if you look here on the left-hand side, we have an interfund gift principal revenue, and we have an interfund gift income revenue. So basically, if you look at the description of my 2 accounts, one of them is interfund gifts to the for an endowment fund. The other one is an interfund gift revenue for a spendable fund. And then if we come up here, there's 2 lines right here, gift interfund principal asset. So that's essentially the asset account where the money is going into. Now, even though there's a principal and an income asset, they're both going to the same place, because regardless of which fund balance this interfund gift goes to, the money's still going into the checking account. And then if I scroll down just a little bit here, you're going to see there's 2 rows, your grant interfund asset. So on the grant side, where's the money coming from? And then you've got your interfund grant expense. And if you notice, it is interfund grants expense. The reason is most people want to segregate those interfunds so that they don't overstate their grants and their gifts at the end of the year, because this isn't new money coming in and it's not money going out. So this allows them to segregate those 2 different types of transactions. Another thing to think about when you're doing interfunds is FIMS. As you all know, in the gift and grant module, you have to use a profile. So on the gift side, who's the donor making the contribution? And on the grant side, who's the grantee? Who's receiving the money? Well, technically, when you're doing an interfund transaction, it's one fund giving money to another. But FIMS still requires you to put in a profile ID. So what we have done is come up with two different options for you to create profile records. The first one, and I'm going to go to my profile tab here. So I'm going to, all right. So if you notice over here on the left-hand side, starting with profile ID 1379, I have a little batch of Interfund profiles that I have created. So this first option for creating profiles in FIMS is to actually set up a profile record for each fund, whether it's the donor fund or whether it is the grantee fund receiving the money. So that's what you can actually see here. And depending on which profile I have highlighted, it's going to tell me what it is, just because of the fact that in this case, the profile I'm on 1379 has a grantee record. So that means there's grantee history, and this has been set up because this fund has received money. Now, if I go down to the next fund, you can see that it has a donor record. So this is the profile for the fund that's giving the money. What I've also done, just to make this easier, I've gone into the donor class for the donor records and created a specific class called Interfund. That way you can, from a reporting perspective, you could exclude these profiles from reporting if you wanted. And I've also done the same thing with the grantee funds. So I've created a specific type for Interfund grantee. These funds also don't have address information. None of that stuff has to be in here. It's just for purposes of processing the interfunds. All right, the second option is using a generic profile called, and if you look here on row profile ID 1174 and 1175, I also have two profiles. One of them is used exclusively for all Interfund gifts, and the other one is used exclusively for Interfund grants. So regardless of which fund is giving the money and which fund's receiving, the profiles are always going to be Interfund gifts and Interfund grants. So your first question is probably, well, why would I use one over the other? It would seem much easier to just use the Interfund gifts and the Interfund grants. And it all boils down to one thing, it's reporting. So at the end of this session, I'm going to go through some of the reporting and show you what the difference makes. So from a fund statement perspective, regardless of whether you use Interfund gifts, the generic, or whether you use actual profiles with the donor fund name, you're still going to see that information in the detail sections on your statements. However, if you were to run a gift history report or a grant history report, all you're going to see is your generic Interfund gifts and Interfund grants. So you'll actually get to see that at the end. Depending on how many interfunds, I guess, you're doing and how important it is to see those fund names in your gift and grant reports, Interfund using the generic would save you time. All right, the next thing is system options. So there are some system options for interfunds. And if I go down under section of my Interfund, this one you're going to actually see a little bit more at the end. It has to do with how your fund statement detail is specified. It's basically saying yes or no to, hold on one second, let me just go back to my Interfund. and I will give you a visual. So if we look at, see how in my description field on this application, it has the fund ID, the donor fund ID, the transaction gift number. That system option has to do with this. You don't have to have these 3 lines afterwards. You can just have the fund ID. That's how you would turn that on or off. And you can experiment with it too to see what it actually, what it looks like. Another one that I want to talk about is the default payment. So depending on when you're processing your Interfunds, my system is set up to auto pay, which means when I create a new Interfund, it automatically checks the box for doing the check. And then it puts the check number and everything in there for me. And you'll see that in just a few minutes. And then you also have, if you have decided to use the generic Interfund profiles, you could use donor ID code and put in whatever that ID code is, and you could do the grantee ID code. So they would default in every time you create a new Interfund transaction. And then at the bottom here, this one has to do with, it says use grant number. So I have mine set to auto pay, and it always throws in the reference number as the grant number. That makes it easy to see when I'm in the accounts payable module looking at the check tab. All right, we're going to walk through the process of creating a new Interfund. And once you get into the Interfund module, you're going to see that there are 3 super tabs here. The first one is the Interfund, where anything that's unposted that you've created and not processed through to accounts payable and general ledger or the gift module will be sitting here. Interfund application history is where you can come in and actually see all of the application side of the Interfund transactions that have been posted. And then under Interfund gift history, you can see all the Interfund gifts that have been added to the system and posted. All right, so we're going to start up here. There's only one button, so you're probably used to seeing in the other modules, there's a little series of buttons up here that are specific to the module you happen to be in. In this case, we only have one button, and it's New Interfund Transfer. And it is the only button that works. The new button over here on the left-hand side, the generic new button, does not work to create Interfund transfers. So I'm going to click on the New Interfund Transfer button. And this is the screen that I see. And if you look here on the left-hand side under Grant, you'll see that auto payment was the radio button was checked automatically, and use grant number. And my payment number is blank because it's going to use whatever the grant application number is. And it puts in my payment date of today. It's always going to default into today's date. So at the top is where you're going to put in your Interfund transfer dollar amount. And then you do have a batch field. So if you wanted to put something in the batch field, you can. It's not a required field. Just going to put today's date in there. And then you also have a description field. That's also an optional field, but I don't believe in leaving any place empty where you can put a little bit of information about why you're doing something. In this case, you're doing an interfund transfer. Okay. Now we've got 2 different sides. So the left side pertains to the actual grant application, the Interfund grant application. And the first field that we have here is the fund ID. So it works just like a regular grant. What is the fund ID that is paying the money? So if I click the drop down, let me find one of my funds. So on the left-hand side, the fund ID where the money is coming out of is right here. On the right-hand side, the fund ID where the money is going to is my operating fund. Okay, so money's coming from the Harley Davidson donor advised fund and going to the operating fund. So on the grant side, who's the grantee that's receiving the money? So in this case, the grantee is essentially your operating fund. So if I click my drop down and I look for my profile for my operating fund, here's my operating fund. So I'll select that. And then on the right-hand side, this is the ID code of the donor. So the donor is the Harley Davidson Donor Advised Fund. So if I click on here, and because I have all of my Interfunds start with an IF, it makes it very easy when I go to find a record by putting in IF. It keeps them all together. And then you have a date field. It defaults into today's date, but you could actually change the date if you wanted to. So maybe I needed to date this a couple days earlier. And to change the date, actually, I'm just hitting my dash to reduce, or the minus sign to reduce it by a few days. And I'm doing the same thing here. So I don't actually have to type it or click on the drop down. So pluses increase your date by a day and minus subtracts your date by a day. Okay, so right now I have everything that I need, and there is two options for actually processing these interfund transactions. There's create. So that means it's simply going to just create the interfund record. It's not going to post it. So you can go into the interfund record, the interfund gift or the interfund grant. You could put some additional grant coding if you wanted, put some additional gift coding. You have that opportunity before posting anything. The create, edit, and post is my less favorite because what it does is it just automatically starts the editing and posting process without really giving you the opportunity to review anything that's in either of those records. Now the defaults, so let's say that this is an interfund transfer that you do on a monthly basis. You could actually save the defaults. And next time when you come in to create a new interfund, you can just pull it up and load the selection. So this is a nice kind of a tool if you don't want to actually have to type all this information every time you come in here, is the default. All right, I'm going to click on create and we're going to create this Interfund. Okay, so I'm on the Interfund tab, which is where my Interfund transactions are. And if you notice, here's my most recent, I've got them sorted by grant number. So here's the one that I just created. And if you look at my tabs, I have the little tabs. I have application, I have the contact tab, the payment plan tab, I have my gift tab, acknowledgement, my general ledger, soft credits, and I have a processes tab. So the processes tab is where you're going to go to edit and post this transaction, the same way that you edit and post any other gifts or grants in the system. But the nice thing is here, you could come into some general coding, put some general coding in. If there's any additional information that you wanted to add to the description field, make sure your contact information, whatever you want to do. The only thing that you can't change here is if, for example, maybe you need to change the cash account. Because that's one of the things that you have to think about when you're creating the interfund is it may be going from fund A to fund B, but what is the cash account that the money is coming from? Do you actually have to write a check to move the money from one fund to another, or are you just changing ownership of the money in that particular account? So if for some reason you need to change your debit and credit accounts for your application piece, what you can do is before posting that Interfund grant voucher all the way through accounts payable, you can actually go into accounts payable before it's posted and change the GL accounts. Now, just like the gifts, if you do need to change an asset account from the gift side, you do have access to the general ledger tab, just like you do in the regular gifts module. All right. So let's go to our processes tab. And I'm going to do my Interfund edit and post. And the date is 5/11 that I changed that to. So I'm going to filter just based on my date. But you also can, if you have multiple Interfund transfers in here and you only want to edit and post one and you've got them on the same date, you can use the Interfund numbers to also filter, or you can filter based on a batch field. Okay. So what makes this edit report unique from other edit reports in the system is that you're going to see both a gift edit and an application edit. So let me make this bigger. So at the very top, you've got your gift edit report, and it looks the same as you would have for your other gift edit reports. And then it's got your little general ledger summary, but right below that is your application edit. So if there is, that's going to show your application here as well. And it's going to give you warnings, just like it does when you do grant application. And you'll see all the same information on your edit report. Now, you're going to see here, it says post Interfund. So this is actually posting the Interfund in the Interfund module. It's posting it into history. We haven't posted it in any other module yet. We're just posting in the Interfund. So I'm going to click on Post Interfund. You also can rerun the report if you need to go in and correct something in the Interfund and just rerun the report instead of having to go back to the menu item. All right. So here's my Interfund posting report. So this has got both my gift and my grant summary in here. But if you notice on the menu bar, I have edit and post gifts in general ledger, and I have edit and post grant vouchers and accounts payable. So what this first menu item is going to do is it's literally going to post my Interfund gift into the gift history and post on all the way through to general ledger. So let me post this, and it defaults in the information here. It knows what date it is. It knows all of this information, the batch, my journal key. And I'm going to say okay. And here is my general ledger edit report with my 2 transactions. And then I can post my journal. So at this point, I will have posted all the way through to general ledger, my Interfund gift. If for some reason, because I've had lots of people call and say, oh, something happened, I closed all of my reports and I didn't finish editing and posting my Interfund. So that's no worries. If you have to go into the gift module, you could, or if you had to go to accounts payable because your grant didn't go all the way through, or maybe you did everything except the final general ledger edit and post, you can just go into those modules and pull up your unposted information and edit and post from there. So it's not like it's lost. It's still created. It just hasn't finished being processed yet. All right, so I'm going to close these 2. And now I have my edit and post grant vouchers and accounts payable. So this is pulling up, when I click on that, it's pulling up my AP item edit selections. So let me just cancel that for a second. And let me go to accounts payable. And the number was, I think it was that 7 right here. So here's my unposted grant voucher sitting out here in item entry. So this is where you could actually come in if you needed to and change the debit or credit, maybe change the cash account because the money's coming from someplace different than where it's going in the fund that's receiving it. So you can come out here, change it, save the record, then go back and finish your editing and posting, which is really kind of cool. So let me edit and post this. And I'll say, okay. Here's my item edit report. Now, because I said this was an auto pay, the neat thing is it's going to not only put my Interfund grant voucher out there, it's going to automatically pay it using the grant number from the Interfund grant voucher that I created. So it's going to do everything all in one step here. So we'll edit and post this, and then we'll edit and post in general ledger. And like I say, if there's a division of duties or how you're doing things, different people need to do the posting to general ledger, that's totally fine, because even if you close this report out, they can still go into general ledger and post the transactions without having to have these reports up because the data is in there. So this is the process for moving through an interfund. Now, if I had an interfund and I said, let me go back to my interfund module here. So when I created a new interfund, if I clicked on create, edit, and post, I wouldn't have to go to the processes tab and click on interfund edit post, because it would automatically, as soon as I saved it, it would bring it up for me. That's probably not, it's not good for 2 reasons. In case you have multiple interfunds that you need to do, you don't really want to edit and post them one at a time. And the other downside to that is you don't have the ability to make any changes. All right. Any questions before I move to the reporting phase of this? I know interfunds are always confusing and frustrating.
There are no questions listed at this time.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so now what I'm going to do is show you a couple different reports and what this data looks like depending on which profile method you are actually using. So if I start with the gift module, and let me bring that over here. Okay, so if I go to my gift history report, and I'm going to load my saved report. So just to show you what you have for options. So if you notice, I have my first line here on my selections tab says adjustment type blank to A. What that's going to do, I have that set as a default so that that comes up every time I run a gift history. And the reason why I do that is that it excludes any reversing gifts and any original gifts if they have been adjusted. So all I'm going to see is corrected gifts or gifts that have never been adjusted. So I don't necessarily want to see all those ins and outs. And then the other piece that's here is there's an option to choose interfund. So there are 2 options, no for just normal gifts or yes for interfund. So this is going to show me all of my interfunds and nothing that has been adjusted. So let me run my report here. All right, so if you notice on my report, any of my interfunds that I have used a specific profile for the fund, it's very easy to see them. Catherine Evans, DAF, interfund profile, Harley Davidson Fund, interfund profile. But if you look at these other ones, for example, right here, they just say Interfund gifts. So it's kind of nice to see the actual name of the donor. It gives you the recipient fund in the fund column, like for here, it's the Christmas fund, but you're not really necessarily sure which fund gave the money. So my personal preference is using a separate fund for each of the funds that you're doing interfund transfers for. Same thing applies to standard grant reports. So if I was to run a grant history report, and I also have a saved report here. Maybe, there we go. I'll load my selections. And I have filtered based on the interfund flag, and I've said I only want to see interfund grants. So when I run my report, this is what I see. So anything that was the grantee is interfund grants just says interfund grants. And then the other ones all show the actual recipient in the name of the grantee organization. So I guess it depends on what level of reporting you're looking for, as to which method you decide to go when you're doing when you're thinking about your profiles. All right. So here's another one that I want to show you. And I'm going to go to General Ledger for this one. And I need to drag it over, sorry. So here's reports, year to date, General Ledger. And let's see. I have a saved report for this also. So what I have done is I've said I wanted to see my checking account, and I want to see the general ledger for my Christmas fund and the Evans fund. So I'm going to run this. So this is what your year-to-date general ledger looks like. It also has the name of the profile in the description. So again, the choice as to whether you use a generic interfund profile or whether you use profiles for each one of the funds, in my mind, boils down to, from a reporting perspective, how do you want to see that information? And one other thing I want to show you here. So a lot of people kind of forget that this is here. You know that everybody has data grids in everything except the general ledger module. So you go into profiles, here's a data grid. You go into the gift module, there's a user definable data grid. Well, there's also up under inquiries, here's another option where you can create data grids. And what I did was I created one using the Interfund table. And let me run this. So this is really kind of a cool way to be able to see in one screen. You've got your Interfund transaction number. You've got the Interfund grant number, the grant date, the Interfund grant amount, the ID code of the payee. So some of them are Interfund grants and some of them actually have the name of the fund. The gift number, Interfund gift number, the date, the Interfund gift amount, the ID code of the donor name, and the gift fund and the grant fund. So this is a really cool way to get everything, both sides of the transaction in a data grid. And the thing is, you have all of the same options. So like if you wanted to report from here, or if you wanted to export this and open it in an Excel spreadsheet, you could do that. And I have included in the handout which tables and the parameters, which fields I use, so you'd know exactly how to recreate that data grid that I just showed you. All right, and the last thing that we have to talk about is your fund statements. So let me go back to general ledger. And okay, let me make this bigger. So I'm going to go to reports and I'm going to go to my fund statement. And I have a saved one here. All right, 2025, that's good. I'm all set. Let me run this. Okay, so these are my fund statements, and I'm gonna find for you the Evans Fund, because that's one that I have been using. All right, so if we scroll down, here's my Catherine Evans Fund. And under the grants that were made, it says transfer to the Christmas Endowed Fund. So the nice thing about the fund statements and the interfunds, regardless of what you choose, whether it's profile option 1 or profile option 2, you're still going to see the same thing in the grant details section. It's going to put the name in it. What it's doing is it's pulling it from the comment feature, the comment area in the gifts and the grants, so that it knows which fund to put in. So either way, if really all of your concern revolves around fund statements, you could choose either way for your profiles. And then let me find the other one. Transfer to Christmas Endowed Fund. Actually, hold on. Okay, here we go. Too many words, Christmas. The Christmas Endowed Fund, and in the gift section, here's my transfer from the Catherine Evans Fund. And like I say, regardless of whether you use profile option 1 or profile option 2, you're going to see the same thing. You're still going to get that level of detail in your fund statements. The only thing, you do have the ability to remove the word transfer, and that was one of those system options. Let me go back to system options. So under Interfund, the option is, hold on, I always forget because it's one of those things you set it and forget it. Um, mhm. All right. Well, it is in one of these and it will remove the transfer. And it is in your document. I'm forgetting and I apologize at the moment. But you can remove the word transfer from the fund statements. Okay. Any questions about any of this? I've got screenshots of all your options, what the reports look like, depending on what you pick, and instructions on all of it, on what you need to do. And
Let's
I'm
see,
always,
looks like we got a couple questions, Robin.
sure.
One of them, will you be sending the handout? Yes, we will be. We'll be
Mhm.
sending the handout with the copy or the link to the recording. And then Jill asked, is there any reason to post the Interfund as a gift versus a non-gift?
Yes, because technically it is not a non-gift because it is an actual gift. It's just being given. by a fund versus an actual donor sending in a check. So it's not a non-gift. It is truly a gift and should be posted as such. What makes it better is that you use the Interfund gift revenue account so that that dollar amount isn't included or doesn't overstate your gifts at the end of the year. So you could actually see in a trial balance, here's my total gift revenue and here's my Interfund gift revenue, which means I'm just moving money between funds. And if you're doing a consolidated trial balance, your Interfund grant expense and your Interfund gift revenue should be exactly the same.
Great. I got one more.
Sure.
For a couple of funds, when we create interfunds, it defaults to different cash accounts and not with the fund's default strategy code account. Then they manually go in and change the cash account in AP module, but how can they fix that?
Okay, so two things. So the depending under which class of fund it is, you have the option to update the interfund cash account in the fund class defaults. Sometimes that's not something that you can do because not all the endowed funds are using the same interfund cash account. So on the fund itself, if I go to the fund module, there is, let me find a fund that's, okay, so there is a tab called GL overrides. So if for some reason a specific fund has an interfund asset that's different than the rest of the funds in that particular class, you can actually come in here and put in an exception. So what would happen is instead of using the default from the regular fund class, you could set it to use the asset account. Where's my interfund gifts? Interfund grants payable. You can set the interfund asset, interfund grant expense, grant interfund asset. Here we go. So you could set a unique asset account just for this fund and just for the times when you're creating interfund grants. Otherwise, you have the option of going to accounts payable and changing the account number. But if you can possibly catch it and not have to manually change the account number, you could use the GL overrides tab for that.
That's good. And if they are still experiencing issues, enter a support ticket. Is that correct?
Enter a support ticket and I'll be happy to help.
Yeah, perfect. Good. I think that's all the questions. While we're waiting to see if there's, oh, they said sure, thanks. Perfect. I'm going to steal the screen away from Robin. And while we're waiting, if you still have more questions, we'll still be on here for a couple more minutes. Our next Let's Talk Solutions will be in July, so please join us then. We will be sending out a notice. And also please follow us on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, connect with Impact. We have been promoting all of our Let's Talk Solutions webinars on LinkedIn, as well as sending out the email notifications. So, and as always, if you have topics that you'd like Robin to cover, shoot either me or Robin an email and we will make sure that that gets added to the list. And that's all we have for today. So please join us again next time. And it was great seeing you all. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.